Good morning, everybody. Welcome. You are joining us at our bi-weekly edition of DiscoverEE, which is a learning session we hold every 2 weeks. So thank you so much for joining us. My name is Alison Moskowitz. I'm the Director of Engagement at Efficiency Canada, and I am joining you from Calgary, Alberta, home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina Nation, the Stoney Nakoda Nations, Métis Nation Region 3, and all of the people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. So I am in Alberta, but we are a remote workplace. So Efficiency Canada is actually based at Carleton University, which is located in the traditional unceded territories of the Algonquin Nation. So for those of you who haven't joined us before, we're going to take about 20-25 minutes to do a presentation, in this case, a conversation, and then we'll open the floor to questions afterwards. I'm very pleased to introduce Natasha Daniel and Fellipe Falluh. They are kicking it up a bit today. We're going to do a bit of a different session. So Natasha and Fellipe are going to have a conversation about his day in the life of a retrofitter. So thank you both so much for joining us today. We're so pleased to have you, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Alison, firstly, for inviting us here. It's very exciting. We are taking a little bit more of an intimate and interactive approach to DiscoverEE this week. And we're starting off with the relaunch. This actually marks the relaunch of our Efficiency Canada Instagram account. And it's also the release of our new energy efficiency workforce campaign, A Day in the Life, which Fellipe is the first to present. And A Day in the Life really is about featuring real people in real energy efficient workplace environments. It showcases a range of professionals from engineers to architects, retrofitters, tradespeople, building science academics, and many more. We'll be having some awesome content that we shot with Fellipe releasing next week. So please stay tuned. It's exciting and it's a timely tool to attract new and mid-career professionals and hires to this wonderful world of energy efficiency. So stay tuned. We'll continue to drop amazing workforce development content your way. But before we begin with Fellipe, I think I'd like to introduce him. I've come to know him this year through the Trailblazers program, and it's been an absolute privilege. Fellipe Falluh is a civil and environmental engineer from McGill University. Fellipe founded his company Retrofit Construction when he was just 24 years of age. He comes from a family of builders in Brazil, making him a third-generation contractor who was inspired to take an entrepreneurial path. Fellipe has dedicated his life to catalyzing, consulting, and executing retrofits in the built environment. His current retrofit on a 100-year-old duplex in Montreal will establish the building as the first net zero ready certified building in the province of Quebec. Yes, I know I can't hear you right now, but I can imagine all the applause happening. So energy retrofits are appealing for several reasons: to meet the nation's 2050 sustainability goals, to meet a growing social consciousness, to improve home equity, reduce home energy costs and energy use. So Fellipe, are you ready to get this started?
So ready. Thank you so much for inviting me, guys. I really appreciate it. This whole program is fantastic and, of course, led by an amazing person like you. So I'm excited for a discussion today.
Thank you. Okay, awesome. Let's start this off. All right. I like to start this off with a little bit of an imaginative question, but it's going to go into the advancements of retrofitting. So just picture yourself, if someone gave you, Fellipe, a magic green wand, of course it has to be green, what would you wish for when it comes to advancing retrofitting and achieving net zero in the built environment?
Great question. I think there's two parts to that answer, right? There's the wishful thinking one, and then there's the maybe real life scenario. I think the wishful thinking one would be, well, we need to catalyze retrofits. So we really need to make sure that these retrofits are becoming more and more viable and more interesting, well, for the general public, we're building owners, right? So I guess I would say the first, if I had a magic wand, would be to create more programs and more grants and more financing options. You know, having the banks recognize, a retrofit is not just like a normal renovation. It will cost maybe a bit more, but if we're able to finance it in a better way, I think that would be the best option. So I guess financial incentives and policy incentives too would be the best options to kind of catalyze this market. When I say that there's also, that's, I guess, wishful thinking, well, it's not always the case. And I think that if that doesn't work, I think the second approach is trying to be a bit more on penalizing those buildings that are not energy efficient and that are super energy intensive. I think also that comes into from, I guess, some policy work too that could be done on that level. And, having the energy audits for every building, at every sale or lease of building, if there's an energy evaluation that has to be done. It's a great way to really separate the good buildings and the bad buildings. And so if we can't, if the building owners can't take, and make the best out of good actions, well, we're going to have to start penalizing what's the ones that are not taking action.
Absolutely. And we've seen that in different industries too, when it comes to licensing, when things are more enforced at either a provincial or federal level, that brings more incentive to contractors like yourself as well, right? And that comes in handy with the information that's needed from the homeowner so that they can know what they can access to get contractors like you and retrofitters in on their home, right? So there's a piece I think that you were speaking about in terms of accessibility to education. Would you say from a contractor level, the homeowner level, as well as from the feds, right? And I
Absolutely.
think in a perfect world, maybe there'd be a little extra carbon taxes on those buildings.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
it's sticks and carrots, right? We start with the carrots. If carrots don't work, bring out the sticks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what motivated you, coming into this environment where, your average contractor is not retrofitting or maybe doesn't even know how to really engage that? So what motivated you to take such big steps as a self-starter? For instance, you started your own contracting business at just the age of 24. Your current project, a retrofit on a 100-year-old duplex in Montreal, will establish the building as the first net zero ready certified building in Quebec. What motivated you to take those steps? Where does this motivation come from?
Yeah, well, I think I'm fairly lucky to know or to have known what I wanted to do since a very young age. And it's something that I always tried to dissuade myself and say this was what I really want. And I guess since the age of 11, I wanted to do green buildings. That's how I would call them, right? And I guess ever since I've been taking baby steps. It wasn't it wasn't big. I mean, I've had some big steps that I took, but it was always taking a little step forward, ever since age 11, doing the 1% every day. That's gonna, bring you to the place that you want to be. So my dream was to always, first of all, I had two dreams in my lifetime was to have my construction company. That's one. And my second one was to build my house. And at age 24, I already achieved both. So to me, it was dreaming big and actually saying, well, you know what, there's an opportunity to make that happen. So why not make that happen? And also, I have to admit, you have to also be naive, because if I knew all the hard work that had to be done and all the hard times that I would have to pass, maybe I wouldn't have done it. So it was a bit of being a bit naive and taking the leap of faith and kind of holding on for dear life until you're able to make it, right? So I think that's what it was.
Fellipe, I know something that also really motivated you was your education. Something that you stated was that you are part of the generation that is growing up with green awareness and sustainability and climate change being one of the key words that you're using. How important was it for you to find that mentor and that professor in university that sort of opened your eyes to retrofitting as a young engineer?
Yeah, I mean, of course, like I had to surround myself with a lot of mentors, right? And mentors come in many shapes and forms. It doesn't have to be a conventional mentor or someone that you have weekly calls with that kind of helps you. It doesn't have to be just like that. I guess every teacher in my education that kind of pushed that sustainable agenda can be considered a mentor. My family in Brazil that are builders that we're pushing a bit the limits, were also mentors to me. So, and then of course there's some that have bigger impact than others. And at university, I found a teacher that really sparked, or I guess helped me narrow down what I wanted to do. Like I said, I wanted to do green buildings, and he really opened my eye to retrofits and the huge potential that there is in retrofits. And I mean, new construction is pretty easy nowadays to do a high performance, good new construction, but the real problem is the whole built environment.
Take us through that a little bit. When you said the whole problem is the built environment, what challenges in the built environment make it hard for people to create more sustainable, energy efficient homes and buildings?
Well, I mean, when I say that it's the real challenge, I mean that new construction, I guess, accounts for only 2% of the building stock every year. So you have that whole 98% that is already existent, right? Of course, like policy work to kind of change the codes for new construction has to evolve to build, I mean, better buildings, but it doesn't change the fact that if we're building better buildings, that's only the 2% that we're building. There's the whole 98 that's existent, and that's the one that really needs help. But retrofits are hard because they're, first of all, they're not cheap. They're expensive. A retrofit is expensive, and not every building has the same retrofit potential. And also not only being expensive, it's intrusive. It's sometimes there are things, it's envelope work. So envelope work is intrusive, whether sometimes from the interior it's more intrusive than the exterior. So there's ways of going around it, but I think that's what we still didn't. I mean, we're still working on it, right? We have a lot of answers, but we don't have them all. So we're still working on how we're going to tackle this whole existing built environment.
Absolutely. And there's a market transformation piece to that as well. That the
Yes.
innovation is there, the technology is there, but how do we transform that in a marketplace that's more accessible to the average homeowner and to the average, contractor like yourself? I don't know if you saw this, Fellipe, but there was an article in Forbes and it was entitled "The Blooming Economy of Home Energy Retrofits Means New Technology, New Jobs, and a Cleaner World." Well, most of us that are joining here know this already, but this was an article, I think that it took place just last April or May. And basically, it was talking about the products and technologies for energy retrofits are advancing at an exponential pace. What effects do more efficient compressors, for example, or computer controls, refrigerants have on your work in retrofitting?
Well, of course, it says it in the term of what we do. It's energy efficiency. So as long as you're getting better efficiency out of a product, you're making it easier to achieve your goals. So that's one part that technology is always, pushing forward. In terms of retrofits, like I said, they're expensive and they're intrusive. So there's a couple of technologies that are really trying to push that, I guess, in the retrofit realm. I guess the first really being prefabrication. Prefabrication is very smart because you limit a lot of on-site mistakes. You work in a controlled environment, specifically in Canada, where you do have winters. So if we're able to push prefabricated exterior retrofits, that's a great avenue to be pushing, to be able to do a lot of these buildings. And it's not a very intrusive operation. There's a program that comes from the Netherlands called Energy Sprong that's basically been done for almost now, I believe, close to 10 years. And that really is a great program that kind of pushed retrofits all over Europe. And now there's a lot of initiatives here in Canada trying to push that too. Some on the West Coast, East Coast, some a bit closer to the center of Canada. But it's been that's a great avenue in terms of technology. So the prefabrication, there's a lot of little parts of technology that goes into it, building capture, the prefabrication aspect, the on-site Lego, I would say. So I think that avenue is very important, but also sometimes, I mean, a prefabricated exterior approach isn't always the right way. So sometimes there's some technologies that make it a bit less intrusive to do those retrofits. Namely, I would think some technologies that help for air sealing, products like aero barrier. There's some products like ventilation systems that will kind of make it easier for retrofits, some HRV, some all-in-one boxes that can make these products or these retrofits a bit more viable in a retrofit context, right? Some hot water heaters that are able to plug in a conventional 120 volt socket. We're getting closer and closer to a world that will be a bit more permissive to these retrofits, so that we don't have to start ripping out all those walls to get a better building performance.
In your opinion, well, actually, I'll preface this first. Is there a limitation of technologies or instruments that you need to do your job that simply aren't within the Canadian market, or people aren't using it here, or it hasn't come out here? Is that a challenge for you in your work?
I don't believe so. Really, it's not like there's an ocean that separates. I always say that Europe is like 10 years ahead or 5, 10 years ahead of us, right? But I guess nowadays, like the information is just it's at the same place at the same time. I guess it's just the society that's maybe not ready for these big changes. That's maybe why they're a bit more ahead. It's in terms of policy work and in terms of mindset change that their societies are ready for it. So I think the technologies are out there. We may not be ready for them here. So even if there's, like I said, there's an ocean that separates us, the information does travel. So
Absolutely. Well said. In your opinion, who's doing it right now? What country, what community, what have you seen that, is your retrofit heaven?
Great question. Some states in the US are starting to really change their policies in regards to multi-unit residential and new construction and everything. That's, I guess, to say in North America, right? Canada, I think Halifax is really doing a lot of great work in terms of energy efficiency, right? They have a pretty dirty grid, so they're really seeing the potential that they have in terms of the built environment. But I think we're all in terms of retrofits, we're all really looking up to Europe, the UK, the Netherlands have amazing programs there, and we have a lot to learn from them. So usually it rhymes with the grid's pretty dirty. There's a lot of improvements in that area to be made, so people see more value in those retrofits. But in terms of who's doing it well too, I think Efficiency Canada is doing a great job at policy work, honestly, and it has to be applauded because they're doing a lot for retrofits around Canada.
Absolutely. Thank you for that shout out, and a special shout out to Kevin and Shireen that both work very heavily on advocating for better building codes within Canada, for sure. So I want to go to some critical changes. I think you've kind of alluded to them during the interview, but what are some critical changes that we can take right now so that we can face the future effectively? In terms of energy efficiency, in terms of the built environment?
Well, like I said, first of all, if we catalyze that market, we have to be ready for it. Like it's all fun and games to say, okay, well, let's give more grants, let's make financing options a bit more enticing, and let's change policy. But if the market's not ready for it, right? I'm saying the construction market, the labor market, if the general public, just the building owners, are not aware of what a retrofit is, or not just a retrofit, or the value of doing these retrofits, and they don't understand the lingo, I think we're not going to be better off. So in terms of future proofing this, we need to start being a bit more loud and starting to talk about it and training the workforce as to how to do things a bit, not properly, but a bit better, let's say. Looking at the details that matters, and also on just the general public side of things, is making them conscious of how dirty buildings, existing buildings are, right? How bad they are for us, and what is the opportunity that we have in them? What's the potential that we have in doing these retrofits? And I think that goes hand in hand with what the first question you asked me as to if I had a green wand. Well, let's catalyze the market, but let's also make sure that the market is ready to approach it right.
Absolutely. And it's 18%, right, of Canada's greenhouse gases, if not a little bit higher, go to just our built environment.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's obviously a quite significant portion when we're talking about achieving net zero. What are some of the ways that people from your industry are making a difference in the world? I know that you're also part of a French-speaking not-for-profit that's doing some great work in this area. Maybe you can speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, well, I'm a board member it's called Bâtiment Passif Québec, which is basically a sort of like we're trying to promote the Passive House certification, which is basically the highest standard there is for construction. And we're trying to bring it more to the French side, to the Quebec side of things, because I think as a general trend, we noticed here in Quebec, we have a bit less access to information due to our language barrier. So I think that reflects also in terms of the construction, the quality of the construction that we're getting here, which is if we compare to BC, is we're way far off. Like BC is also much ahead, and other provinces too. So I think that there was this general trend that Quebec wasn't getting as much information. I for one, pretty much how I'd say I'm half self-taught, but I got a lot of my information, I guess, from the internet, and it's all free information, but in English, right? Whether it be social media, YouTube, some free trainings, LinkedIn, it's a lot of English content. So I think on my side of things, like I'm working for that also not that nonprofit, Bâtiment Passif Québec. I also have a podcast in French where I'm trying to kind of bring that to the French, or that same level of information to the French language, so that we can have those discussions and we can have that market transformation, but in our language. I mean, it's a pretty big barrier. If you don't speak English and you can't access that information, it's a lot of missed potential there.
Absolutely. And just to kind of, summarize too, I think we're talking about accessibility to information. We're talking about having a more extensive, sophisticated communications plan for this sector so we can bring more people in and make homeowners more aware. And something else that you stated in terms of language, we need to make the information accessible to so many different people. And if we really want to diversify this sector and bring in more, equity and inclusivity, then definitely French speaking tools is a part of that, as well as other languages as well. So to any of you who are part of any government organizations, just, that's something that's definitely needed right now, is that translation. I know that we have a few minutes left, so I do want you to plug in your podcast and everything that you're doing on the education front to encourage more people like yourself. It kind of is a path where you have to be a self-starter. You don't know exactly where to start or where to go, but you want to make that easier for folks. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, of course. So my podcast name is in French, so it's called Au-delà des murs, which basically translates to Beyond the Walls. I'll put all the links there in the description at the end, and also links to my LinkedIn and my email, so you guys could ask me questions. If we don't have time to answer them, I'm always happy to chat with everyone. And yeah, so what we do in the podcast, we interview basically every episode a different person in the industry, whether it be an architect, a builder, a policymaker, a consultant, a product manufacturer, whatever it is, tied to basically high performance construction. So that's one of my avenues. And the other is like I said, the Bâtiment Passif Québec, where we're trying to really bring out passive house here in Quebec. Trainings, that's something that's coming soon, I guess, for the next year. We're developing some trainings for contractors here in Quebec. So we have sort of our equivalent of the CHBA, where we're working on developing here for contractors, that coursework that's going to be a bit more passive house, I guess, inspired.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. You're doing such amazing things. I want to leave enough room for everyone to ask their questions. Fellipe will drop in his information in the chat for those of you that are asking, as well as a link to his podcast. Before we leave, some of the solutions that we spoke about today and ways moving forward in terms of awareness, having more content, curriculum really matters when it comes to this. That's why you can hop onto our career hub, where we provide amazing trailblazers like Fellipe and his story and career pathways of how people can get into this amazing sector. The Career Hub has been effective in connecting the sector of 436,000 Canadians and helping to bring awareness to those interested in a new first career or a mid-career switch, all while placing emphasis on equality, diversity, and inclusion. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us from our Instagram account, from everywhere. Thank you so much, and can't wait to check out these questions.
So well said, Natasha. And I would also just like to recognize you, Natasha. I think you've done an incredible amount of work on this file, bringing just amazing people from across Canada and from different diverse backgrounds together. So well done to you. It's just been incredible to watch. And again, so I just posted the link to the Career Hub in the chat here. What we'll do after this as well is we will send an email with some of these links out to everybody. This is being recorded as well, so you can check back if there was an answer that you want to know more about. You can contact Fellipe. So let's get to the questions. Okay, so Philip is asking, what kind of ongoing investment in time, money do you find you have to make to keep up to date with like new equipment, new ideas, new technology? Where do you get that information from, Fellipe?
Well, I do work with a lot of subcontractors, so I mean, there's 24 hours in a day for everyone. So I think you really have to have a good network of also subcontractors that are doing their work in their specific area, whether it be like a ventilation contractor, he should be in the know, or he should also know about all these new heat pumps that are coming out and all these new products that are coming out. So I think you're also just as good as your network too. So you can't know everything. It's also nice. I mean, to stay in the know. I like to stay in the know, being active just on social media. You get to see a lot of what's happening. But yeah, there's just 24 hours in a day. So surround yourself with good people.
Yeah, definitely. And good social media accounts,
Yes.
I think.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so this is interesting. You mentioned heat pumps there, and we're seeing, so somebody's asking a question about somebody in their area, an HVAC contractor, convincing someone to install an oil furnace with propane. So what do you know about sort of like the training for contractors to help them get up to speed on this? Like, how would they know about heat pumps and that heat pumps are reducing emissions and other technologies?
How would contractors know? And is that specific to any area, or?
Or maybe HVAC contractors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, like, what have you seen in terms of contractor training?
Well, listen, I think heat pumps, it's a funny thing because I think it's very divided in terms of where we're speaking from. I know that here in Quebec, all you hear about is heat pumps. So that's not a technology, and it depends on the grid of everything, right? We're very strong on electricity here, so it makes sense financially to go for these heat pumps. Sometimes I agree. Sometimes in terms of cost, it's becoming more expensive. If that energy is not clean, well, sometimes, I mean, I'm saying sometimes the best kilowatt is the one that's not used. So energy conservation is your first thing. Then you go and you switch your fuel source, right? So the first is using less. That's the most important. Then you fix the fuel source.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, there's a couple questions in here about the greener home problem, or the greener home problem, the greener homes cancellation. You know how I feel about it now. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. You were talking about, how you'd like to see more programs, and we've seen this huge program get canceled at the federal level. So are you seeing that as an issue? How is industry reacting to that right now?
Well, listen, I think if they are canceling it, there's something else that will come in. I know for a fact that the government is aware of the potential that there is in buildings, and they want to help. So maybe sometimes is removing a program to make space for a new and better one. The Greener Home program was a good shifter in mindsets and making it, open. But let's be honest, if you're getting $5,000 for a retrofit, it's not a lot. So it's very small, right? It's good to start to make, start having conversations about it, but we need better programs than what Greener Homes was giving, right? In Quebec, there's another program that's called Retrofitting that is kind of complementary to the Greener Homes program. And I mean, it's maybe another $5,000 that you can go get, but like I said, you're not basing your ROI of a type of investment like a retrofit right now based on these programs. And maybe in the future we'll be able to have that. Consider it, to me, I just see it as a bonus. You're doing that and you're getting a bonus. I think one of the best things that it was for me was those free energy audits that you get at the beginning and at the end. That's the most valuable that you have is knowing where you are and where you got at the end.
Yep, I love that. I totally agree. I am also hopeful that they're making room for a new improved program. Liz, I see your question about what Efficiency Canada is doing about that. I can say that we are working in the background. We do a lot of invisible work when we see big changes like that, trying to support the industry. But I also don't want to take away from why we're here today. So if anybody wants to chat with us about that, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Natasha or our info box. We're happy to share information about how we're working with the industry to support programs like this. So with that, let's move on to this question from Jean-Paul. So he is a new migrant here, and he's been in the green building industry for about 9 years, has been able to certify projects in different countries. He's wondering what your best advice is for beginning a sustainability career in Canada, just having moved here and sort of being that mid-level career.
I think I would answer that question with more of a comment that, or sort of a remark that was given by one of my other fellow trailblazers, is I think the market is growing at such an unprecedented pace, then like you'd really have to ask to not have a job, or not to land a job in energy efficiency. There's so many opportunities. It's I mean, energy efficiency is a huge sector, right? I'm just a little 1% of that sector. I'm a contractor. I can do my work there, you know, but in terms of policy, in terms of consultancy, like energy efficiency is huge. So I know there's the job board from Efficiency Canada that's pretty good, always up to date with a lot of companies that are, you know, interested in looking for individuals like that. If there's training, there's a lot of training. There's the micro credentials that are offered now for free. Excellent micro. I've taken some of these classes, you know, introductions to sometimes to building science. So there's a lot of great opportunities out there. I think just start shooting your shots, send out your CVs, and you're always gonna get an answer. It's not the hard sector to get in right now.
Awesome. Natasha, did you want to add anything to that? I know you do a lot of work and you look at a lot of different places in the sector.
I mean, Fellipe said it best. I feel like you are our Efficiency Canada promotion there. Yeah, definitely come onto our job board, because it's the sole energy efficient job board that exists right now. So you're getting a really wide range. And on top of that, our job board cross promotes with other job boards. So quite a few people are seeing this. And for employers that are out there that also need to find and retain employees, this is a great opportunity for you to come in as well and promote your jobs and your postings. Another thing that I would say for that question regarding being a newcomer and trying to get into the industry, networking is really important. Check out our events calendar, because there could be in-person events in your province, or as you know, so many Zoom meetings, and staying in contact with DiscoverEE, because every week there's a new exciting panelist that's talking about some part of the industry. Those type of things, keeping those names and making sure that your work is being mentioned in various spaces, and making that person-to-person contact is really important. So that's the only thing that I would add to that.
Fantastic. Thank you both. And I think the next question I'll pose to both of you as well. So you had mentioned micro-credentials, Fellipe. How would you like to, are there any gaps that you see? What else would you like to see in terms of, you know, diplomas, workshops, any more micro-credentials? Like, what are you seeing out there that's really good, and where are you seeing gaps? And Natasha, feel free to add on afterwards.
Well, listen, like I said, I'm 1% of the sector, so I can't be in the know of everything. Speaking about construction, I think bringing more energy efficiency into mind in carpenter schools is something that's super important. Understanding that they have a huge impact on a building's performance. I think if they understand that doing that 1% detail is going to have a great impact, I think that is a great point to go get. So that's just me looking at my area of things, right?
That's really interesting. We don't usually think about a carpenter when you think about energy efficiency. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? Where do they have such a big impact on buildings?
Well, carpenter usually are the ones that, how I work, I have a few sub-trades, but the carpenters are really the ones that are going to do that envelope work, or bridging the in-betweens and the gaps. How you frame your house, how you install certain barriers, tapes, and being detail-oriented so that you're very airtight is super important. Yes, it takes a bit more effort, but it's a question of opportunity. When you have the opportunity and you're working on the right spot, you do it well before you close up that wall and you don't see it for 50 years. So that's what it is.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, Natasha, did you want to add to the sort of training and micro-credentials piece? Or carpentry, if you know anything about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to put this in a little bit of a larger picture here for folks, so that we can sort of digest this information and possibly find better solutions for this. One of the things I'm seeing within the trades is there's a divide. And right now we are putting out a career hub survey to educational institutions, programs, microcredit programs, you name it. And we're also speaking to employers that of energy efficient organizations and businesses. And we want more information on what courses are being put out there. I just find right now the biggest, for a person right now that's trying to get into the field, or if you're young and you, or you're a young contractor and you just started college and you want to figure out how to navigate your career, that one professor can change your life. Right. And I think that we have to sort of ensure that the programs are being able to reach those energy efficient requirements so that it's not an add-on, or that you just are so happy or so lucky that you happen to meet someone that introduced you to green buildings, or what happens when you put an extra nail on a building envelope, how that makes all of a difference. Right. I think this has to be mandatory. Right. And there's a little bit of a divide right now, and there's more complexity around it when it comes to the trades, because a lot of young people that are coming in are like Fellipe, and they're growing up with climate change and sustainability at the forefront. And so they're more open to what that kind of education looks like. But again, there's a lot of complications when it comes to contractors and folks in the trades being able to access that information and access the information while on the job to receive the training. So a lot of politics, but if we can just sort of frame it in a way where we're digesting this and understanding that we really, really need at an educational level for this to be presented to every single contractor and tradesperson, that this is an option and it's going to be the future.
Very well said. Thank you so much, both. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit. This question is more about sort of the construction components. So Fellipe, I'll pose this one to you. When you have a client that's got a limited budget, how do you work with them to prioritize what sequence to do things? So yeah. I just want to also maybe add on to this question, like some of the skill sets that people can build if they're interested in doing this work.
Sure. So when I look at a building and when I go see a client, of course, everyone has a different budget. And not only that, everyone has a different building. Like I said, and what I like about retrofits is that every building is different, right? So every building is going to have a different strategy. And identifying that retrofit potential is super important. So working with the budget and what the client wants, sometimes you can find some synergies. For example, a property has some bad siding, it's due to change. Well, that retrofit's probably going to be done from the exterior. If the exterior is pretty fine and the interior is aging and he wants to maybe redo a room or two, a kitchen here and there, we'll do it from the interior. So every building is different. So on the limited budget, also it's important of finding the areas that have the best bang for buck. And usually that's the air tightness. So in terms of importance of elements to address, first is, like I said, is air tightness. That's the most important. When we deal with air tightness, we're going to deal with at least 50% of what we need. It's like half of the job is done if you're making a building very airtight. Once you make it very airtight, though, you really have to ventilate right. That's the second rule. So really having that good ventilation and controlled ventilation to give good interior air quality, right? We're not doing all of this just for energy efficiency. We're doing this for health and comfort and resilience and durability in our buildings. After that, I would tackle the windows. Windows, even though they are good for our well-being in terms of, bringing in that natural light, they have to be the right size and the right orientation. And not only that, they have to be high performance because they are a big, big hole in our envelope. So going and switching to high performance windows, that's very important too. And then I would really deal with insulation. So insulation only comes on the fourth point there. Of course, you need a minimal amount of insulation, but when I say is adding more insulation, there's no necessity for that until you deal with that air tightness and you deal with those good windows and you deal with good ventilation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, so we're just about coming to time here. So I think, we've heard so much about your incredible journey, Fellipe, and I'd just like to give you the opportunity to maybe close with sort of, if you could share one thing that people could walk away from this session with, what would that be?
Great question. Listen, I'm looking through the questions. I know there are people asking about how do you do to test? I think that's something very important. So I was speaking about air tightness. that's very important. It's one of the most pivotal points. So as a contractor, I think one thing that would be amazing if we're able to change is that if we're testing along, doing those blower door tests and those energy models, it's the best way of knowing. It's science, right? It's taking the guess out of the equation. I think that's very, very important in what we're doing, right? We need to be able to measure where we are to know where we want to go. So I think doing those blower door tests all along at the beginning, at least once before you do the billing, so you know what your starting point is. One once your first air barrier is completed, then before your drywall, and one at the end. So the more you test, the more the more you know where you're gonna go, right? And if you're on target or not. So I guess if there's a good change, is test more. Buy that blower door and have that for your business, and that's just for contractors. But yeah, that's a bit more specific, but I thought I'd end it with that.
I think that's a great, honestly, in life, know where you're at to know where you're going and how to get there. Thanks. It's a great way to close off. And Natasha, I also wanted to give you a chance to just share a few words. I know you've shared lots of resources on the chat there. And as I mentioned, we can send this out in an email afterwards for everybody that wasn't able to join us to the end. So yeah, closing words from you, Natasha.
I'm so sorry. I was just wondering if this person wanted their question to be answered. Fellipe, it was just said, at what point in the retrofit journey should we install heat or energy recovery ventilators?
I was about to answer.
Yeah, maybe. Sorry.
I'm about to answer right now. Yeah. So Kevin, I think the best point, usually when we get to a very airtight building, the closer we get to 3 air changes per hour, when we go below that, then we really want to start getting that natural ventilation. I would even go for a bit higher than that. I would put that ERV, but when it starts becoming effective is when we go below that 3 air changes per hour mark.
That's how I would like to close, with Fellipe's amazing knowledge, and just saying thank you so much to you, Allison, for allowing us to share this time together. And please do check out our Instagram. All the links are there below. We're putting amazing workforce development content out there to inspire folks, but also give people that tangible knowledge of how they can access this and do amazing work like Fellipe and all of our trailblazers featured on the Career Hub.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks to you both. So before we close, I'll just mention this was recorded as mentioned, so it'll be on our YouTube channel, and I'd give it a week. So you can access this there in perpetuity, see Fellipe and Natasha's lovely faces. And then we also have an upcoming discovery. If you're interested in just sort of what's been going on in the energy efficiency world, we're doing a look back at 2023 with our executive director, Corey Diamond, on December 15th. So join us there to understand what's happened in the sector, and then some of the upcoming policy changes that we're hoping to see in 2024. So thank you so much again, everybody. If you didn't get your question answered, reach out and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Yes, please do. Please reach out. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Efficiency Canada.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.